It's been a busy, newsworthy week with legend Denny O'Neil passing away at 81. Certainly somebody who contributed majorly to DC titles and Marvel titles for that matter. A lot of people forget that he had pretty epic runs on Spider-Man and Iron Man. But a lot of other news around the continual fallout with DC and Diamond, prepping up for death metal here coming out next week, and just people still trying to react to what state the comic industry's in. So I'm going to try and recap a bunch of things, maybe for the last time here. I think that until there's new news, I hope the analysis has been helpful, but also we're kind of treading over the same topics over and over. So let me see if I can answer some of the questions that have come up and just kind of at least set the stage for where we're headed here in the next few weeks. Hey everybody, this is Perch. Like I said, there's been a lot of news, and the news has heavily been dominated by DC. In particular, for a few reasons here. One of these is that simply DC is up and moving again. Their line is shipping every week. They have these new distributors. We'll get to that in a moment. But DC is really just trying to get their production of comics back to normal. They did not do the pencils down or the halt anywhere to the level of any of the other publishers. They have routed some of their work into digital, some of their work into print, and they're basically trying to return to take advantage in many cases situation to get back to normal and basically head into death metal. A lot of things they were teeing up as aggressively as they could. Now, some of this is natural in the sense that they have a new corporate acquirer, which is AT&T, who has big hopes for DC and the properties and what they can become. And definitely, if you're AT&T and Time Warner, you want your version of the MCU. There's belief that with the actors that were really iconic with Marvel now leaving, Chris Evans going, Robert Downey Jr. going, and question marks on how much more we're going to get out of Scarlett Johansson and several of the others. I think DC sees an opportunity to kind of take the ball and run with it. And so that's really what they're doing. They're trying at all costs to be successful. Now, we're getting death metal next week. And on top of that, we have this continual buzz over their termination of their Diamond relationship. Now, as I've been saying on the channel kind of over and over, and if you've heard, while it's shocking mainly because a lot of people didn't think this would ever happen. But it's worth noting that for the last 15 years, literally 15 years, there's been question marks as to which publisher was going to break from Diamond first. And if you just go back in the internet Wayback Machine of just 3 years ago, honestly, you see a lot of speculation that Marvel was going to leave Diamond, that through their relationship with Disney, they have other distributors, they have other options, they have other ways to get into the direct market, and many assumed that Marvel would be the one to pull the plug and start doing their own thing. They didn't, which is an interesting question mark for why they didn't. Speculation on my part is simply that they had bigger fish to fry, and meaning Disney. And so it wasn't worth, going through the legal loopholes of breaking a contract, changing anything else. But we do know that Marvel and DC, and truth be told, even people at Image and the independents have had issues with Diamond over the last 5-10 years, either with kind of delays in getting things shipped, problems with the supply chain. Just that it hasn't been a friendly, cheerful relationship. Diane Nelson recently on Facebook said this and talked about how they had big concerns about Diamond's sustainability, if they were viable as a company long term, and why they weren't modernizing, why they weren't changing. Now, I've said this a couple times, and there's been a couple of people in my comments who come in very aggressively to say, no, Diamond is actually one of the best. They have top-notch, cutting-edge IT. Nothing says that that's true, but of course, I don't work for Diamond. Maybe it's all the big smokescreen, and underneath all the rumors and the things that we've heard from people who have gone and poked at it, like Diane Nelson and others, and all the comments that their own employees post on job boards. It seems to indicate a very different picture, that it was a company that hadn't invested much in its future, and they were kind of just continuing to live by the status quo and maybe hoping things weren't going to change. So DC did pull the plug, and definitely you've been seeing the reaction from retailers and from other people in the comic industry, Eric Stevenson and others, who are really angry about this. And why they're angry is, I mean, I'm not a psychologist, I can't get into their heads, but in a lot of cases, it's a matter of change. Change is scary, especially for a business that's in the brink, where there's a lot of risks and a lot of worries about what's going to happen next. Change can be very, very threatening. And so people, when they're faced with that, start looking for ways it can go wrong. And one of the ways that they landed on was certainly that the new distributors, Lunar and UCS, are actually, behind the scenes, they're owned by Midtown and Discount Comic Book Service. And I think here's where, in particular, Bleeding Cool did the industry a huge disservice, because they launched this story like it was a breaking scoop, like they dug into it and they uncovered that Midtown and Discount Comic Book Service were sneakily hiding the fact that they were involved. They were creating these shell entities that, in this nefarious way that might compete with other retailers. The problem with that is not even minutes after Bleeding Cool broke their story, it was revealed that Lunar and UCS and DC openly stated who was behind these entities, who the people were, and they kind of laid it out very cleanly. And it looked like this was something where maybe there was an embargo on the news coming out, or it's unclear what happened. But basically, this story was cast as something sneaky and bad was going on, and whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, time will tell. But it started things off on the wrong foot, and ever since then, feels like a lot of the retailers and people in comics have been kind of spurring each other on to come up with the most conspiracy laden kind of paranoid theories on how all this will work. Now, we hear me saying this. You shouldn't take it as I'm a DC apologist. I've said in other videos I'm more of a Marvel comic fan historically than a DC fan, but I am a fan of people who manage their business and push to, not just live with the status quo and try and evolve. I like people who try to manage their business. So I do like the fact that DC's making moves. Now, do I like all their moves? I don't. I think their transition period and the notice they gave to retailers was terrible. I think that because I got some of it as well, there's a lot of lip service of, we're trying to do this for you and we're trying to help you out and we hope that you'll like this. But then very, very poor communication. And a lot of cases, a lot of promises that were broken. I had promises from multiple people at DC around various things that say, oh, we'll definitely help you out. We'll definitely do this. We'll definitely come and give you a comment, or we'll definitely help you out. And then nothing. In fact, it's been a very, very, what looks to be disorganized approach to a lot of this. Now, being fair, because fair is fair, we are in the middle of a pandemic. A lot of things are moving around, decisions and stuff's changing from day by day. You can't look back 1 month and predict what was going to come. I mean, we had in February, it was, in January, there was no virus. In February, it's like, it's just over there in China. In March, it's like, well, looks like it's going to hit some things, but states are overreacting. In April, it's like, holy crap, everyone's going to die. In May, it's like, well, maybe everyone's not going to die, but people are getting restless. Oh no, what's going to happen with the economy? Here in June, it's civil unrest and social, demonstrations and absolute, chaos based on this horrific event of the policeman killing this man. It is, what will July hold? Nobody knows. So you have to give DC some accommodation for the fact that things are shifting as fast as they can, and they're basically running to keep up. Elsewhere in the industry, Marvel has slowly started shipping comics again, but they're still on the every other week approach. So this does mean that this week, basically, we're going to get death metal pretty much running unopposed. Marvel is in this trade week where they had new comics out last week, but this next week they will basically let DC kind of be in it on their own, and they're taking a gamble that a lot of people still aren't going to comic shops. The world hasn't opened up yet, and I've heard from people on Marvel's side this won't matter. It doesn't matter that DC is getting death metal out because people aren't back shopping yet. People aren't getting back and buying comics. So basically, it's a negative to them because death metal is going to launch with, a quarter of the audience. And most people, they're banking on the idea that most people will not show up in week 2 and week 3 for DC. So basically, well, what I mean by that is, by the time stores start to open up, we could be into August. And if we're into August, then we're talking about Death Metal 3. And if fans are coming to the comic shop and going, yeah, I'm not going to jump on now, we're already on number 3, I'm just going to skip it. Instead, I'll buy this Ten of Swords thing. That's what Marvel's banking on. Who will be right? I think we will look and see in August. I think there's more people who are hungry for comics and wanting to buy them than they think. I do think it's something that DC is going to have to very carefully watch and evaluate. If they don't get the kind of pickup and Marvel turns out to be correct, that people are just slowly coming back into stores, they're going to have to figure out a different approach. So it's interesting to see how all this will play out. But that's the basics. You're hearing a lot of people around, this is going to be a nightmare, this can be terrible, or it'll be great. You're hearing a lot about it. But we don't know yet. We simply, there's not enough information out to say whether this is all going to be good or not. The one thing I can say, and this flies in the face of certainly what Eric Stevenson, head of Image, and a lot of the retailers, people like the guy from Mile High, Chuck, and others have said, is that if nothing had happened, if DC had simply said, you know what, okay, we're going to do just the same thing as Marvel, we're going to lay off, we're going to furlough, we're going to just go on pause, and then we'll slowly kind of leak back comics in a very small way in June, maybe do more in July. If that's what DC had done, nothing would have changed, since all the unit shares would have stayed the same. DC probably would have had a bigger negative impact because they had teed up Death Metal and some of these other stories, Joker War and other things, so they would have delayed out even that stuff coming back. It definitely would have been good for Marvel because it would have kept Marvel on top safely, but it would have been, I think, catastrophic for the industry. I mean, creators are not getting work. DC pushing things, I think, did cause Diamond to try and get back going again faster. I think they actually caused Marvel to get going back faster. And so I think whether you like this move, whether you think it's good that DC has left Diamond and all these other side effects, people pushing to get, for comics to get back and moving is a good thing. If you look at other industries, Amazon, all these other companies, they sent people home, but they kept them working. Comics had effectively come to a complete halt. Comics didn't need to come to a halt. A lot of people were still able to draw, still able to write, still able to produce things, still able to generate excitement in comics. So grinding to a full halt just means it's going to be harder to get it up and moving again. Wasn't going to be good for the industry. So I think the long-term view, whether or not the new distributors work, whether or not DC's change to Tuesday, a lot of these other smaller elements work. My strong belief is that 1 year, a lot of these things will settle out. We'll be back to one day. Either, Marvel and Diamond, others are going to move to Tuesday, or DC is going to move back to Wednesday. This will be back to one day within a year. And I think we'll have a much better sense of where it's all going, by even December, January. But I think in hindsight, we'll also look back and say, DC pushing to keep comics going out the door and keep creators employed and keep pages being drawn was a good thing. It helped keep people from tipping over into a real bad state, and it did. It got things moving again faster, and that was a positive. So hopefully people look at it that way. Like I started with, I'm very sad to hear about the loss of Denny O'Neil. Definitely made some amazing comics, and I strongly encourage you to look into his work. A lot of people know about his Batman work, of course, The Question, but like I mentioned, he had a pretty amazing run on Iron Man that I really enjoyed. And his work on Spider-Man was top-notch as well. So definitely a class act, knew how to put in social issues but not beat people over the head with it. He was the exact thing I always talk about when you say, if you're going to tackle social issues, if you're going to tackle these harder concepts, do it well. Denny O'Neil did it very, very well. And the comic industry is a smaller place for his loss. I hope this answers some questions, gives you some kind of a bow on things. We'll see where the news goes, but like I said, we've covered this one to death, so hopefully there aren't other questions out there. If you do have them, please leave them in the comments below. I will try and answer them. Maybe I'll do it in the announcement board here on YouTube, or you can always follow me on Twitter or Facebook at Comic Perch. Like, subscribe, introduce to a friend. My channel's had some growth lately, and I really appreciate that. I'm grateful to every new voice or in person that's listening to me, and I really do want to encourage you to ask questions. Let me know what you want, and I will be happy to answer them. But most importantly, especially in times like these, you guys have kept me company, and I hope I have kept you company as well. So thank you for listening.